Nobody wanted the marsh. That was exactly why Sarah Collins bought it. The county auction lasted less than 15 minutes. Most buyers came looking for farmland. Others wanted timber rights. Nobody even bid on parcel 47, 230 acres of soggy marshland, flooded nearly year-round, covered with cattails, filled with mosquitoes. The auctioneer sighed. Opening bid, $2,000. Silence. Sarah slowly raised her hand. I'll take it. The gavel struck. Just like that. She owned the most worthless property in the county, or so everyone believed. 6 months earlier, Sarah's life looked completely different. At 22 years old, she and her husband, Caleb, had been saving every dollar toward buying a small farm. They weren't rich, but they were happy. Then one rainy evening, everything changed. A logging truck crossed the center line. Caleb never made it home. One accident, one phone call, one funeral. The future disappeared overnight. Medical bills consumed nearly everything they had saved. Sarah sold most of their belongings. She rented a tiny apartment. Every morning, she worked 2 jobs simply to stay afloat. People constantly told her to move on. She hated those words. Moving on sounded like forgetting. She refused to forget. Instead, she searched for something worth building. That's how she discovered the county auction. After the sale, several buyers laughed while walking past her. You just bought a swamp. Another man grinned. Hope you enjoy feeding mosquitoes. Sarah smiled politely. Maybe they were right. But Grandpa Collins always said something she never forgot. If nobody wants the land, ask yourself why nobody bothered looking twice. 3 days later, she drove toward the property. The marsh stretched farther than expected. Golden reeds swayed beneath warm autumn sunlight. Ancient cypress trees rose from shallow water. Birds circled overhead. Despite its reputation, the place felt peaceful. Beautiful even. Near the center of the marsh stood an old wooden hunting cabin. Weathered, crooked, nearly hidden among tall reeds. According to the county records, the cabin had been abandoned for decades. Yet smoke stains around the chimney looked surprisingly fresh. Sarah frowned. She parked nearby, unlocked the front door. Inside smelled of cedar, coffee, old books, and machine oil. Again, fresh machine oil. She stopped walking. Why? The cabin should have smelled abandoned. Instead, everything looked maintained. The fireplace had been recently cleaned. Shelves remained organized. Furniture contained almost no dust. Someone had quietly cared for this place. Then she noticed an envelope resting on the dining table. Sarah. She immediately recognized the handwriting. Her grandfather's. Her heartbeat quickened. Grandpa had died almost a year earlier. She carefully opened the envelope. Inside rested a handwritten note. If you're reading this, then you trusted your own judgment. Tears filled her eyes. That sounded exactly like him. The letter continued. Everyone sees mud. Very few people see what's underneath. Nothing else. No explanation. No farewell. Just another mystery. Exactly like Grandpa. The following days passed quietly. Sarah repaired loose porch boards, cleaned broken windows, cleared brush around the cabin. Each evening, she watched the sunset paint the marsh gold. Something about the place healed her. For the first time since Caleb died, she slept peacefully. On the 5th evening, heavy rain rolled across the wetlands. The marsh filled with the sound of falling water. Sarah sat beside the fireplace reading Grandpa's old journals. Then, clunk, a deep metallic sound echoed beneath the floor. She lowered the book. Another clunk followed. Slow, mechanical, not random. She grabbed a lantern. The vibration seemed strongest beneath Grandpa's old writing desk. She knelt, tapped the wooden floor. Solid, solid. Then, hollow. Her heartbeat accelerated. No. She searched the desk. Nothing. Then she noticed an antique brass compass sitting inside the top drawer. Odd. Grandpa never left tools without purpose. She picked it up. The needle didn't point north. Instead, it pointed directly toward the fireplace. Sarah walked over. Above the stone mantel hung an old carved wooden duck. She smiled. Grandpa carved it when she was 8. Then she noticed something unusual. One eye of the duck looked different. Brass. She pressed it. Click. Deep beneath the cabin, ancient machinery awakened. Hidden gears quietly turned. The massive stone fireplace slowly slid sideways. Sarah stumbled backward. Behind it, a reinforced steel door. Cold air drifted upward. Attached beside it rested another envelope. Sarah. Again. Her grandfather's familiar handwriting. Hands trembling, she opened it. Good. You remembered to trust the compass instead of the map. The note continued. The marsh isn't your inheritance. It's protecting it. Sarah's pulse raced. She unlocked the steel door. A staircase descended deep beneath the marsh, much farther than any basement should reach. Concrete eventually replaced natural stone. Steel beams lined the tunnel. Ventilation systems quietly hummed. Automatic lights flickered on one after another. The passage finally opened. Sarah stopped breathing. An enormous underground complex stretched beneath the wetlands. Archive halls, engineering laboratories, research workshops, climate-controlled vaults, rows of secure storage chambers. Everything immaculate. Everything operational. Everything preserved. What? She whispered. Is this place? She slowly approached the nearest cabinet. Each carried engraved brass labels. Energy leases, mineral rights, property holdings, royalty agreements, current operations. Current, not abandoned. Current. Her heartbeat accelerated. She opened one cabinet. Geological surveys, oil exploration maps, environmental studies, current lease contracts, current royalty statements. Everything remained active. Everything still generated income. Then, at the center of the enormous underground chamber, a magnificent walnut desk waited beneath a circular skylight carved through solid rock. Resting neatly on top, one final envelope. Her name, written in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting. Sarah. Her hands trembled, because suddenly she realized. The worthless marsh hadn't been hiding buried treasure. It had been protecting the greatest secret Grandpa had spent an entire lifetime building. Sarah stood motionless beside the walnut desk. The underground complex stretched beneath the marsh like a hidden city. Research laboratories, archive halls, climate-controlled vaults, engineering workshops. Rows of polished steel cabinets disappeared into the distance. Nothing looked abandoned. Nothing looked forgotten. Everything looked ready for work. Slowly, she picked up the final envelope. Her grandfather's familiar handwriting tightened her throat. She opened it carefully. Inside rested a thick handwritten letter. The first sentence made her smile. If you've reached this room, then Blackwater Marsh finally fulfilled its purpose. Sarah lowered herself into the leather chair. The letter continued. Good. Everyone thought I owned a swamp. The truth is, I own the future beneath it. Attached behind the letter were legal documents, mineral rights, lease agreements, access cards, and financial reports. The first page carried a title, Collins Land Trust. Sarah had never heard the name. She continued reading. Energy leases, mineral rights, conservation easements, environmental restoration projects, oil and natural gas royalties, long-term land management agreements. Every contract remained active. Every payment continued arriving. Current income, not old records. Current. Sarah slowly leaned back. Grandpa hadn't buried gold. He had quietly assembled one of the most valuable land portfolios in the county. The letter continued. People chase quick fortunes. Land quietly grows more valuable while they aren't paying attention. She smiled through tears. That sounded exactly like him. Always patient. Always thinking decades ahead. Then she reached the financial reports. Her breathing stopped. The current oil lease alone guaranteed nearly $18 million over its lifetime, with additional annual royalty payments already being deposited into the trust. Enough to erase every debt. Enough to buy any home she wanted. Enough to guarantee financial security for the rest of her life. Yet strangely, the money wasn't what overwhelmed her. One question refused to leave her mind. Why me? The answer appeared on the next page. Now let's discuss something far more valuable than wealth. Her hands trembled. You probably believe I left this because Caleb is gone. You're wrong. Tears quietly rolled down her cheeks. I left it because grief teaches patience better than success ever can. She closed her eyes. Caleb immediately came to mind. Their tiny apartment. Weekend breakfasts together. The farm they dreamed about buying. The rainy night that changed everything. The empty chair at the kitchen table afterward. The unbearable silence. The letter continued. At 19, you would have celebrated becoming rich. At 22, after surviving loss, you'll understand stewardship. Sarah nodded slowly. He was right. Years earlier, she would have focused only on the money. Now, she saw responsibility. She opened another cabinet. Leather-bound journals filled every shelf. Her grandfather's journals. The earliest volumes contained land surveys, geological reports, investment strategies, conservation plans. Gradually, the entries became personal: family photographs, fishing trips, birthday memories, stories from Sarah's childhood. One journal stopped her, written shortly after her wedding. Caleb respects the land. That's why Sarah chose him. Her vision blurred. She turned another page. The handwriting became heavier. Written after Caleb's accident. No grandfather should watch someone so young lose the person she planned forever with. Another. She thinks the future ended beside that highway. She's wrong. Then the final entry. If she ever finds the room beneath Blackwater Marsh, I hope she discovers purpose before prosperity. Sarah quietly closed the journal. For several minutes, she simply listened to the soft hum of the ventilation system. Because suddenly, the underground complex no longer felt like an inheritance. It felt like love. Years of careful planning. Years of quiet faith. Waiting until she was ready. The following months transformed everything. Attorneys verified every mineral lease. Geologists confirmed every survey. Energy companies validated every contract. Everything proved authentic. The marsh truly sat above one of the region's most productive oil reserves. Every ownership document legally belonged to Sarah. Soon the offers arrived. Major oil companies, investment firms, energy corporations, land developers. One executive placed an offer worth $18 million on the table. You'll never receive a better one. Sarah smiled politely. Then she declined. Instead of selling the land outright, she renegotiated the lease to preserve ownership while increasing long-term royalties and strengthening environmental protections for the marsh. Some executives thought she was making a mistake. Her attorney disagreed. You just protected your family's future for generations. But the money wasn't her greatest accomplishment. Using the trust, Sarah created the Caleb Collins Foundation. The organization provided scholarships for students studying environmental science, agriculture, and land conservation. She established emergency grants for young widows rebuilding their lives after sudden loss. She also funded wetland restoration projects throughout the region, proving that responsible energy development and environmental preservation could exist together. The marsh everyone mocked slowly became a nationally recognized conservation site. Migratory birds returned. Native wildlife flourished. Researchers partnered with the foundation to study wetland ecosystems. The old hunting cabin remained exactly where Grandpa left it. Simple, quiet, weathered. Visitors assumed it was merely a historic landmark. Only Sarah knew what rested beneath its floor. Several years later, she stood on the cabin porch watching the sun rise across the golden marsh. Thousands of birds lifted into the morning sky. The water reflected brilliant shades of orange and gold. She held Grandpa's leather journal close to her chest. For the first time since losing Caleb, she didn't feel defined by grief. She felt guided by love. People often asked about the marsh, the oil lease, the fortune. They assumed buying worthless land had made her rich. But they misunderstood. The oil lease gave her financial freedom. Her grandfather's wisdom gave her direction. Because hidden beneath an overlooked marsh wasn't simply an $18 million opportunity. It was proof that the greatest value is often buried beneath the places everyone else dismisses. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't the fortune someone leaves behind. It's the confidence they quietly build inside you long before you ever discover what lies beneath your feet.